my lady, notices were published in the mainstream dailies in both English and Kiswahili. And that was on 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of October 2024. I have to refer my lords to Annexure SN5, running on pages 225 to 234 of the affidavit of Samuel Njoroge. In the same affidavit, my lord, my lady, it's a fact that notices were broadcast on mainstream TV channels, radio stations, and on Parliament's official website, together with its social media handles, X, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. Again, this is in Annexure SN7 of the affidavit of Samuel Njoroge. My lord, there were public hearings initially held at every county headquarters, where members of the public were invited to engage staff of the National Assembly and submit their views through templates which were provided to them. It's important, my lord, to point out that the grounds upon which the first respondent was to be impeached on was set out not only in those templates, but also in the publication I adverted to earlier. Again, my lord, my lady, those are attached. And then, my lord, there were public hearings on 4th and 5th of October 2024 in every county headquarters. There was an order issued by His Lordship Justice Mwongo in petition E014, and I believe it's one of the petitions you shall be determining, my lord. An interlocutory order was issued directing the National Assembly to expand the scope of public participation to constituencies. And that was done, my lord. So, effectively, my lord, public participation was also undertaken in all the 290 constituencies in the country. My lord, Parliament also provided a dedicated email address from which members of the public who are unable to submit their views physically could send their views to Parliament. But at the end of the day, my lord, all this material, all the views which have been collected by the National Assembly through its staff, it was to the benefit of the members of Parliament who are going to take their vote. It has not been suggested, none of the petitioners before you have suggested that any of the members of the National Assembly was unable to vote because they were not duly instructed by their constituents. There is none. If anything, only one MP of those who were able to vote abstained from voting. In other words, the members of Parliament were able to make choices based on the views they had gathered from the members of the public. But what was the outcome of the public participation exercise which was undertaken? Some 223,000 Kenyans submitted their views physically in the various offices of Parliament. Probably the most intense and elaborate public participation exercise ever undertaken in this country. I think it mirrors the public participation which was undertaken prior to the adoption of the Constitution. I think that is the only other public participation session which rivals the adoption of the new Constitution. My Lord, views were received on email, others were received on the ex-handle of Parliament, and it was effectively utilized by the members. It has been suggested in one of the petitions that the format which was developed by staff of Parliament for collection of views was restrictive, that probably it should have been an empty page for Kenyans to write. It's our submission that, my Lord, it was more about accessibility, enabling Kenyans to digest the grounds and express their views. But any other Kenyan who felt that they needed to submit their views in a different format, and that's why the formats which were utilized differed in nature and character, they were at liberty to do so, and many did so. There were affidavits submitted, there was memoranda submitted, so there was no restriction to utilize that form. And the challenge on that ground, my Lord, is without basis, and it is for rejection, and we urge you to reject. It did not restrict any Kenyan to that particular mode. My Lord, there is, allow me to then go to the that limb of the public participation by addressing this, by responding to some of the allegations which have been raised. But before I do so, allow me to submit and say, in terms of quality and the quantity, the National Assembly met the threshold expected of it in the Constitution, Article 10, Article 118, and also by the established jurisprudence of this Court, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. The test required by all the existing jurisprudence has been satisfied and was satisfied. Now to respond to the issues which have emerged or have been raised by some of the petitioners, it was alleged, and I believe this was alleged or raised by the third petitioner, the Honorable Njeri, that there were allegations of violence, intimidation, and disorganization in the public participation forum. It is our submission, my Lord, that with the exception of Kerugoya, Kirinyaga County, sorry, and in particular Kerugoya Township, the National Assembly did not experience any issues of violence, intimidation, or disorganization. Why is Kerugoya important, my Lord? That petitioner, and I believe in her petition she identifies herself as the woman, the county woman member to the National Assembly for that particular county. The county office in that particular county was closed by herself, by the third petitioner. She closed her office and then rushed to court that same day to obtain orders before Justice Mwongo. And she did obtain those orders, but it prompted action from the National Assembly, and in our Annexure SN10, we have attached a letter from the clerk of the National Assembly addressed to her, raising concerns with our poor attempt
Council is making it that Honorable Jerry closed the platform for public participation must be somewhere in the affidavit lodged. So that the Lordship we guard ourselves against misleading this court, so that Council and your Lordship may direct us to the affidavit that is currently highlighted that specifies that Honorable Jerry closed the platform where public participation is supposed to take place, Your Lordship. The Council can guide us on the particular paragraph of the affidavit.
My Lord, I shall retrieve. I'll ask my colleague, Mr. Omar, to retrieve the affidavit.